1967, over 90% of Australians made a historic choice, one that would reshape the country's constitution and its future. It was a moment that would echo through generations, marking a turning point in the nation's journey towards justice and equality. This is the story of the 1967 referendum, when Australians voted for equality. It's a story of courage, determination, and the power of ordinary people to bring about extraordinary change. Back in 1901, when the Australian Constitution was written, it left Aboriginal Australians out in two key ways. The founding document, crafted by the nation's early leaders, reflected the prejudices and limitations of its time. First, they weren't counted in the national census. This meant that Aboriginal people were rendered invisible in the official population, their presence unacknowledged by the government. Second, the federal government couldn't make laws for them. Only the states could. This left Indigenous Australians subject to a patchwork of state laws, often discriminatory and inconsistent, with no national protection or support. These sections meant that for decades, Aboriginal people were excluded from important national decisions. They were denied a voice in the policies that shaped their lives, and their communities faced ongoing disadvantage and marginalisation. By the 1960s, things were changing. Australia was in the midst of a social awakening, with growing calls for civil rights and justice for all. Indigenous leaders, families, and supporters gathered signatures on petitions calling for change. Across the country, people from all walks of life joined together, determined to right a historic wrong. Public awareness grew across the country, with newspapers running stories, campaign posters popping up, and rallies in city squares. The movement gained momentum as more Australians recognised the need for fairness and inclusion. Politicians from all sides agreed it was time to ask the people. For one of the few times in Australian history, there was broad political consensus that change was overdue. On May 27, 1967, Australians went to the polls. People lined up at schools, community halls, and local polling places, ready to have their say on the nation's future. They were asked a simple question about changing the Constitution. But behind that question was a much bigger issue: whether Australia would finally recognise its First Peoples as full members of the nation. The result was overwhelming. Australians voted yes, with more than 90% approval, one of the highest ever recorded in the nation's history. The celebrations that followed were filled with hope, relief, and a sense of shared achievement. With this decision, Aboriginal people would be counted in the census, and the federal government could finally make laws for all Australians, including Indigenous Australians. It was a crucial step towards equality, opening the door for future reforms and greater recognition. The 1967 referendum didn't suddenly grant rights or citizenship. Those changes had already begun in previous years, but it did send a powerful message that the nation was ready to move forward together. But this vote was a powerful step towards recognition and inclusion. It marked a new chapter in the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians and inspired future generations to keep pushing for justice. It showed that when given the chance, Australians could come together to choose fairness and respect. The spirit of unity and hope that swept the country in 1967 remains a source of inspiration today. The legacy of that day still matters. A reminder that democracy is shaped by every voice and every vote. The 1967 referendum stands as a testament to the power of collective action and the enduring belief that Australia can be a fairer, more inclusive nation for all.